Folks, this is Book Talk with Corbin. I'm your host. I have with me returning guest, brother Reverend Pastor Matt Singleton.
Hey.
He's been here before, as I said. Look, guys, I want to make sure you know where to go to get more information about this brother's articles and books and things of that nature. You go to biblesmack.blogspot.com. biblesmack.blogspot.com. Okay? Because we're only going to talk today for 15 minutes. 15 minutes ain't enough.
hmm
We're just touching the surface here. You got to go to biblesmack.blogspot.com. Okay? Get his books, his articles, and more information and thought about this very important issue we're going to deal with. And the issue we're going to deal with today, folks, is the scriptures, the Bible. Not now, brother, correct me if I'm wrong. The Bible in Greek means the book. Is that correct? Or
No, it means library. So it's
okay,
books.
all right, books.
But there's a very important point to what you're saying, because even atheist scholars keep on talking about the Bible as an individual volume,
Uh huh.
which just means they know what they're talking about, and its author is God. That's the issue. Is that the only reason that you're calling it one book is because its author is God. And
Okay.
there are human penmen, human, prophets and stuff like that who've written things down, but it would make no sense. It was constructed over a 1500 year history of writing and different genres, different classes of people, different continents. This would make no sense unless it was written by one author, and his name is Jehovah.
Now, brother, let's continue with that. Let's continue talking on that. So, I'm not going to restate what you said because that was a mouthful. I mean, 1500-year period, different authors. Did you say different languages too?
Different languages and different continents.
And different continents,
Yeah.
and yet it's one book,
Mhm.
and you're saying that gives evidence that this one book is inspired by God. How do you respond to people who would say, "Look, it's been corrupted"?
Mhm. Well, essentially, they've done everything they could to corrupt it. They've burned thousands of ancient manuscripts. They have slaughtered people in the terms of millions and done everything they could to destroy this book. They put it down. Every verse, this one guy noticed that every verse, I think at least in the King James Bible, with the exception of about 100, and they've probably been argued against since, but they've all been slandered at some point. They've all said, "Oh, well, that's probably not true. That's not true,"
Mm-hmm.
you know. And it's so much hate that it almost says, "Wow, if you're hating it that much, maybe there's a point to it."
Yeah, yeah. Because I heard, and you know this as well as anybody,
Mhm.
how some of these dictatorial regimes, particularly the communist regimes, one of the first things they would do is not just ban certain books in general, but they definitely would attack the scriptures
Yes.
and churches.
Yeah.
Um, but they, the I know, I used to run with the Marxists and all those guys, and one thing they would always say, "Hey,
hmm
man, that Bible it contradicts the science of evolution. How can you believe
Yeah.
it?"
Yeah. Well, let's talk about evolution for a second. Um, Evolution actually starts off with what we call a philosophy called naturalism. Okay, Charles Darwin had a book. People talk about origin of species is about evolution. I couldn't even read the word evolution when I was searching through that book. Okay, it uses the word natural selection based on naturalism. It's the idea that there's nothing spiritual or miraculous, everything is materialistic, and then it operates according to these laws of science. The question that you have to start off with is, if that's true, where did science come from?
Mm,
Okay, if everything's operating according to the laws of science, what's making the laws of science the laws of science?
mm,
What keeps gravity gravity? hey, where did time come from?
Mm.
Now, that may sound weird until you understand that there's naturalism, and then the next thing is evolutionism. Okay? Evolution is not just a concept for biology. They want to give you that small meaning so that you buy the rest of it. But essentially, evolutionism goes from the Big Bang Theory was adapted to it, but all these other different groups. Judge William Overton, who was in this creation science trial in 1982 in Arkansas, he made this big memorandum making these rules, and he said that oh, what was it? Oh yeah, that if we got rid of evolution, then we would have to get rid of all these different sciences. Now, creationists are the ones who actually, the scientists who are creationists actually made all the sciences, but they've been perverted in our education system for about 100 years, and so every piece of thing is done by this philosophy, and then they say it's just biology. No, they do it according to psychology. They do it according to religion. They've got, anthropology was made to overturn history because all history confessed to God and creation. So they had to have a new interpretation through anthropology.
Mm.
Okay, so all these things, they're developed in this successive ages and periods and times to get us into that mindset and into that way of life. And honestly, evolutionism is not only religion, but it just doesn't work. As I said, the laws of science. Did the laws of science make the Big Bang, or did the Big Bang make the laws of science? And at what point do you insert time? When we look at a cell and we talk about life, you see, they don't want to talk about where did life come from anymore because their only working theory has been debunked. And that is the idea of abiogenesis, where a cell forms. A cell has individual parts, and so all the parts have to be together. Guess how many individual parts are in a cell, Corbin?
Mm. Right.
1 trillion.
Wow.
Normally, 1 trillion parts for every single cell. They thought, Ernst Haeckel, okay, a German evolutionist, he thought that it was just mucus and that they found some sea foam. And so he made this theory about how the sea foam is this special mucus that turns into cells. Turned out it was just salt water. It was foam from salty foam. That's all it was. And so these ideas are totally backwards. And the reason why this is a huge problem that evolutionists don't even think about anymore is because they assume that all life is related in evolution. All biological life forms are related. Well, at that point, then you have an evolutionary family tree. All the branches have to go back to one source because they're unified. Well, there can't be that one source. That cell can't form. And there's other problems too. You don't have any two-celled organisms. Okay, just to start things off.
Mm-hmm.
We do have viruses that are very small, but viruses are not even thought of as living things according to biologists.
Mm.
You have they'll say, well, we have colonies, but we don't have organs. And on top of that, remember, everything is natural, which means it's random chance, which means it's an accident. Everything is supposed to be an accident. All of your organs are supposed to accidentally function together, accidentally.
Mm.
They used to have an idea called embryology, and Ernst Haeckel would make these proofs of this embryology. You know what the proof was?
Mm. What?
It was a cartoon. And not only is it a cartoon that they put in their textbooks, they put it in American textbooks. And even in the 2000s, there are still some schools that will still have this cartoon to tell you this is how evolution works.
Wow. Folks, we are talking to Pastor Matt Singleton. He does BibleSmack.blogspot.com. BibleSmack.blogspot.com. You need to go there. to buy his books. He's put out a real good book, thick one, it's a great one. I bought it from Amazon.com, and his articles, because we're just touching the surface here. This brother could literally talk for hours on this topic. Brother, let me ask you this. I was in a debate not too long ago through Facebook, and this young man was saying Genesis is ridiculous because evolution disproves Genesis. It takes out, it ignores what he said, millions of years of evolution.
Mhm.
I've
So
read Genesis, and I'm like, well, I mean, I have to admit, I don't get the impression Genesis speaks to millions of years.
mhm. It doesn't. And in fact, think about this. I think it was, I could be wrong, it was in Exodus chapter 23, maybe it's 29, where it refers to the Sabbath and it gives a death penalty to those who break the Sabbath.
Mm,
And it mentions the reason for the Sabbath is for God created the world in the 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested.
mm,
Now, if they were not taking that seriously, why would they put a death penalty on it?
mm.
Think about that. You're
Okay.
practicing the Sabbath, okay, and they put a death penalty on it, and the purpose for the Sabbath is the creation in 6 days. And it's not written that way in Genesis 1. That further pushes it when it comes to our interpretation. The greatest Hebrew scholars, by a vast majority, except for some moderate evangelical scholars. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. Everybody says, oh, yeah, that text is saying 6 days, seventh day rested, and then we have the genealogical records. Now, when we talk about evolution, it says everything was made by an accident. We say everything was made by God. Now, the 6 days specifically are a type of miracle we call creative miracles. Okay. That is that there's not a closed system of scientific laws. God is putting things in place, and then it starts off. Now, other things, the Great Flood is actually what I'd call a providential miracle. In other words, there's evidence of it, there's some science behind it that we can look into. And, that's a great conversation. But I'm going to let you guide this because we got a short time.
Sure. Now let me get this clear. So when it talks about, as you point out, they're in Genesis and really the books of Moses, first five books of the Bible. You're not saying a day is millions of years. You're saying a day is a day as we understand it, 24 hours. Is that
Yes, it's a
what you're saying?
solar day, specifically 24 hours.
Right. Wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Because I've heard some, sort of like evolutionists, and they'll say, well, that's not what a day is in the
mhm,
Bible. A day could be millions of years. But
yeah,
again, when I read the scriptures, I'm like, I'm not seeing
yeah.
that is
Now, some theologians would be okay with the Big Bang and not okay with evolution because if Adam is the product of evolution, then how can all people be sinners from Adam? Okay.
mm,
Um, but essentially, they really came out after theistic evolution came out. And theistic evolution is this idea that God created through evolution, which is popular. The problem is that it's not what we call monotheism.
mm,
It's not really because nature does things, not God. Well, then if you
mm,
say, well, God did it through nature, then God becomes nature. Okay. And if God becomes nature, that's what we call pantheism.
yeah,
Kind of like what you see out east with the Buddhists and the Hindus and stuff like that.
right,
So Teilhard de Chardin, he was kicked out of the Catholic Church because he was a pantheist. Okay, and he started the movement of theistic evolution. He also is a forefather of the New Age movement,
mm,
and the New Agers will tell you that. He was like, "Oh, he's one of our heroes."
right,
So essentially, that's what has to eventually happen when the logic all fits in place. People are trying to take one idea and put two ideas together. And there are people that are very smart that can make it sound good,
mm,
but logically, it does not work. And you also have an evil God out of theistic evolution because the evil God kills things, he kills people. He killed the Neanderthals to make Adam and Eve. Problem, we have been found to have Neanderthal genes in our DNA.
mm,
So then what happened? God is killing people without sin. You see, all this stuff starts to come together. There is no right, there is no wrong. No wonder Hitler was a theistic evolutionist.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
by the way, he wrote a second book, Mein Kampf 2, that wasn't published in his lifetime, but basically, that one is according to the theory of evolution. His desire to take these countries over was survival of the fittest evolution.
Yes.
So I mean, like, he was an evolutionist, thoroughly.
Yes.
You know,
Yes. Yes. So it sounds to me. Let me say this real quick again. This is a we're speaking with brother Matt Singleton, Biblesmack.blogspot.com. Biblesmack.blogspot.com. Folks, you got to check that out, and ask your friends your Christian friends to check it out. But dare I say, also ask some of your atheist and agnostic friends to check it out as well. All right.
and
Um,
also that link, I think it was 2021. Find the answers you need. There are 3 books that I post up that are based on the blog, so it just takes you through the blog. And the first one is The Fact of Creation, which is going to hit this stuff hard. Then there's going to be But What is the Truth, which will kind of guide you more into evidence for Christianity.
mhm.
Okay. And then the third one is an old look, a new look at an old word, and
Yes.
that will help you out understand the Bible, how it was formed, how it's been preserved for us
Yeah.
in a perfect form.
Well,
And we're imperfect people, so we have imperfect ideas, and it kind of confuses the situation. But outside of like some knowledge and interpretation, the Bible is right there and ready for people.
mm. Brother, let me conclude with that. With this general broad question. A pastor once put on Twitter. He said the Bible is subjective, and he then his next statement, and I'm paraphrasing here, to be honest, to be honest to him, but he said the Bible is subjective. It's the Bible is the Bible for the oppressed, because the Bible has been used in the past to justify slavery. Um, but I guess what concerned me most was the 2 statements. One, the Bible is the Bible of the oppressed, and it belongs to the oppressed, not the oppressor. And that was very clearly stated by him. And also, he said, you know, the Bible is subjective. It
Well,
seems.
if the Bible is subjective, then who's objective enough to label the Bible subjective?
Mm,
You're saying that you know better than the Bible, you know better than God eventually,
mm-hmm,
and you can't get past that fact. We are subjective. We don't know, but God does know.
mm-hmm.
Now, when we talk about oppression, the Bible is the book of the oppressed, okay? It is not the book of the tyrants. Otherwise, they wouldn't burn our Bibles. Otherwise, they wouldn't steal our Bibles, mark our Bibles. Okay, it's the
Or,
big money people that do this stuff.
or
All
kick
right,
our Bibles out of the schools.
yeah. Like a lot of people don't know, the reason that the authorized Holy Bible was eventually titled King James Version was because they used to go around taking people's Bibles, burning people's Bibles.
Mm,
And so the people with the Bible said, the king authorized this Bible. I have a right to the word of God. And you can't take that right away. This is what God has given me.
mm,
I mean, it is the same spirit that was brought in our nation's foundation,
with the
you know.
Constitution. Yeah.
And by the way, we can't confuse people. Our nation is no longer living according to a godly foundation. But basically, all our gifts were given when we submitted to the truth.
Mm. Folks, we're going to close it there. Had a good, really appreciate you making time to do this, brother. And
Yeah,
I
no
want
problem.
to urge people, please, please, listen to this interview, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Share it, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Also, join become a subscriber to my channel, and go to biblesmack.blogspot.com. Biblesmack.blogspot.com. Brother, thank you so much. We need to do this again sometime because, again, as I said, sort of like during our pre-interview, the attacks against the scriptures are just ongoing, and it has been so for many, many, many years. I don't know if you.
Yeah. A famous author once said, he titled a book, The Devil is Alive and Well on Planet Earth.
Mm, wow. All right, brother. Let's keep in touch and do it again sometime.